Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. We're so excited to have you with us today for our second virtual internship webinar of the fall season, the fall part of the school year. We have an awesome lineup today of two really exciting guests. And also, many of you have met before, my colleague, Mac Dowd, our implementation specialist at Rubin. I'm Danny Rubin, the founder of the company. We provide online instruction for business communication skills. Teachers, show of hands, Zoom hands. How many of your students write you emails that look like text messages? Show of hands. Oh, there go the hands. So a big part of what we do is we teach professional communication and etiquette, business etiquette. And our guest today will certainly reinforce that. You want to play at the major league level, right? At the big leagues, you have to have everything buttoned up when you're dealing at that level. And so we're going to get into that today and what they do. I also want to welcome our interpreter, it's Kelsey Lee. Thank you very much for being here. Mac, you can turn off your camera and we will let our guests introduce themselves in just a moment. Okay, before we do that, I'm going to share my screen and offer some resources as we always do. How many of you, raise your hand, teachers, if you're a first timer to our session? Anybody new to our session today? And how many of you have been here before? Answer that while I share my screen. Pull this up. Okay. So for those of you who are new to us, returning to us, you know what we always like to do is give out free resources. I just mentioned to you that we help students with their email etiquette. And one of the first thing I want to offer you, anybody who'd like it for free, is a Google Drive folder of exercises teaching email etiquette. Lessons on creating a professional email address, how to not send emails like text messages, how to write a subject line appropriately, how to address teachers and employers, how to make an email signature, and other topics. Simple lessons that teach students how to construct a professional email so they'll be taken seriously for opportunities, for internships, for scholarships, for jobs, whatever it is. So if you don't have these resources yet, hang tight, I'll tell you how we give it out. We also always like to give out an online presentation checklist. It's a simple one-page guide on how to give effective online presentations that's useful in the classroom, useful at home, wherever you might be giving a virtual presentation this year. How many teachers expect students will be giving virtual presentations at least one time this year, even if you're in the classroom all year, and I hope that you are. So if you would like these resources, as we always do, those of you who've been here before, you know our routine. Go to the chat right now, teachers, type the word interested and your email address, and we will pass it along. What we like to do for the new folks, new to the Rubin community, is have a brief phone call later this week, just 5 minutes to get to know you, understand what you're teaching, help you make sense of this content for your classroom. So the new folks, we really want to have that quick hello because we can't do it in this environment. There's too many of you and we got to get to our guests. So again, interested and your email address, thanks to those who are putting that in. You can keep that coming. I want to move through a couple more slides and then we'll start our conversation. Okay, thanks to those. We always like giving out free stuff, especially with email writing. It's so important. So I appreciate all the interest. And if you're watching this on a recording, you can use the subject line Rubin email worksheets to the email address in red and we'll pass it to you that way. If you're watching it later on, we know many teachers do. Last 2 bits of information. We keep our webinar series rolling. And in 2 weeks from now, we are going to talk with a doctor about the world of medical careers, hopefully a nurse as well. We're still trying to line that up. And our guest will be Dr. Ryan Williams. He's a pediatric neurologist at a children's hospital in Virginia. Interesting background, interesting job. And we're going to learn all about his day-to-day and working as a doctor in 2 weeks, 22nd, same time. Okay, so please put that on your calendar. You'll see our big email blast about it later this week. And finally, everyone who's here today on Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning, we will send you a certificate for being here, teachers and students. So you can use this on in your portfolio. You can put your name on it. So look out for your certificate on Wednesday morning. All right. And yes, Jimmy asked, we will also put the recording of this webinar out on Wednesday morning. So look out for that as well in the same message. Okay. Now, let me turn off my screen share. Let's bring in our special guest. We have Miss Maddie Redmond from the Dallas Cowboys. Who here is a Cowboys fan, perhaps? Or put your NFL team in the chat. Let's see who we got. We got all over the country here, Miss Redmond. So let's see what teams we got. We got the Chiefs, the Colts, the Cowboys. Oh, the Cowboys.
Here we go.
I'm seeing some Cowboys. And we also have Mr. Brett Raisman from the New York Islanders up there in Long Island, New York. Appreciate both of you being here. I'll first let Miss Redmond introduce herself and tell us what she does day to day, her bio, her background, and then Mr. Raisman, and then I'll start off with a question. Go ahead, Miss Redmond.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name is Maddie Redmond, and I am on the corporate partnership marketing team for the Dallas Cowboys. And that's really just a fancy way of saying I work with all of our sponsors who, you might go to a game and you might see a logo on the LED that runs around the interval of the stadium, or you might see a commercial on TV, or you might see a logo on a social media post. All of those are there for a reason, and they're part of a partnership agreement that we work with these different sponsors, these big brands like Pepsi and Bose and United Healthcare, to name a few, to bring this to life, whether it's events or tickets or signage or different promotions that we run with them. I'm really the intermediary between the brand and the team. So that's kind of what I do.
Wow. I want to make sure everybody's paying attention. In our webinars, we talk a lot about keywords, specifics, listening for details. She said she sometimes works with a soft drink company. Did anybody catch the name of that soft drink company? Can you tell me in the chat as you still continue to tell me what teams you like? It really got into that. Pepsi.
There we go.
Thank you. We want to listen closely for details. Details matter when we talk about our own story, when we listen to others' stories. Let me go to Mr. Raisman. Tell us what you do for the Islanders.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for having me. I am currently the coordinator for New York Hockey Holdings. In layman's terms, obviously that's not the Islanders, but what New York Hockey Holdings is it's the ownership group / holding company of the New York Islanders. And I also work as well with UBS Arena, which is our new arena that's going to open November 20th, which is a very exciting project and happening for all of our fans in Long Island. So my role is really anything and everything. It's a very unique team that I'm on. We're about 8 people, ages 25, which I'm on the younger end, to about 33, all the way up to our senior vice president. And my role is to really primarily specialize in marketing strategic stuff, but I also just do anything and everything. So one thing that we're going to talk about today is the playoffs, and something that I did for that was organize our ownership suite, make sure our guests are taken care of. So really anything under the sun, from administrative tasks that are really important to throw successful events to very important strategic decisions that our ownership group directly wants me to work on.
Wow. Sounds like you're really getting a broad understanding of, a professional team and the NHL, just all the little pieces, which will help you move up and decide sort of what you want to focus on, but you're really getting a big education right now. For sure. And how this all works. Well, one thing that the worksheet we passed out ahead of time, and we'll just talk about it right now. Those of you who have been to our virtual internships before, what do I always encourage you to do with our guests ahead of time? What's that R word I always talk about, and we always do it? We start from the same spot. Anybody know that word that I always discuss? Those of you who have been here before, what do we do? Ms. Gutierrez said it. Research. Look at all these folks who know the deal. Research. We do our research. We do our homework. Why? Tell me why we do our research. Tell me while I pull up our research. Let me get my internet going. Okay. My chat going. Why do we do our research? To get ahead of the game. That's right. So what I did is I went on the website and I was poking around, looking at different information about the Cowboys and the Islanders ahead of today. One thing that I wanted to ask, I'll start with Mr. Raisman, because one of the big stories that I knew just from following sports is that the Islanders made it all the way to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, falling to Tampa Bay, which is probably really hard to still talk about. But I have to talk to you about it because you just mentioned it. You were helping set up suites and you paint the picture for us. What was it like? So much excitement getting that far. What was it like inside the organization, and what kinds of things were you doing?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been an interesting path in general. I'll speak a little more vaguely right now. So I actually started in February 2020, which, as we all know, is a month before everything shut down and the pandemic happened. So my first month was in person. I was actively setting up the ownership suite, creating guest profiles and lists so that our ownership and key executives would know who to expect, what their role was, and any impertinent information in terms of negotiating with potential sponsor executives or otherwise. Remotely, it was very interesting last year. I'm very lucky that the Islanders were very accommodating because I personally was not comfortable pre-vaccination going to arena with 12,000 crazy fans, as much as I love it. So during the playoffs this year, it was really just about doing anything and everything I could to help as much as possible remotely. So there was a lot that went into reopening the Coliseum for the playoffs. And you also have to keep in mind that the Islanders don't own Nassau Coliseum. So we have to work with a company that is partially shut down and really be all hands on deck to make anything and everything happen. So if you're looking to work in sports, I would really expect the unexpected and be able to shift your priorities and shift what your expertise is as quickly as possible. In short, what I did that this spring was, one, we focused on capitalizing on any marketing opportunity we possibly could. So that includes engaging with an STM gift if we advance to a round, or it includes making sure that our social posts and TV reads are up to date and correct and qualify with what we're trying to sell at that given moment. And then more tactfully and more, I guess, procedurally, was setting up the ownership suite or setting up guests. We actually don't have an ownership suite at Nassau Coliseum because the executive level was occupied by hockey operations, and obviously they were in a bubble during the playoffs. So again, you have to adjust and just work with what you have. And we worked on placing guests wherever the best seats available were, while also accommodating our 11,000 crazy, passionate season ticket members. So it was very complicated. And then also you're working with vaccinated and non-vaccinated sections. Wow. So lots of moving parts in a new post-COVID world. So in short, anything and everything. I continue to do guest profiles and make sure to assist in any way I could remotely, whether that was creating shipping labels for boxes and gifts that were being set up, whether it was creating guest profiles, or whether it was helping to actually place guests in their proper seat for certain games. So It was really wild and crazy, but it's a good problem to have when your team is winning.
Absolutely. Winning creates good problems, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, I spent some time on the Cowboys website. A lot of the stories here are about players and who's making the team. And I know from Ms. Redmond's perspective, she's on the marketing, the partnership, the branding side of things. So my first question to you is, the Cowboys are considered America's team, right? That's been their long-standing nickname, and they're such a national brand. Do you ever have to approach companies, or do they always come to you and want to do business with the Cowboys, and you're just having to figure out how to fit them in? Or how does this work? How does this interplay work between advertisers and the team?
Yeah, so we do have to reach out a ton. And by we, I mean our sales team. So I work in tandem with our sales team on the corporate partnerships team. And a lot of their job is prospecting and finding new partners, because if a partner in a large category, doesn't renew, if they say, no, we don't want to extend our partnership, we don't want to continue being partners because of whatever reason, we want to fill that category. And we are actively seeking out competitor brands in that category. So yes, sometimes there are companies that reach out, but I would say most of the time not. A lot of times we do have warm leads. So our sales team isn't just cold calling people. It's, who do I know that might know someone at this company? to make an introduction so that it's a warm lead versus just cold calling. And then a lot of our I would say that we're victims of our own success in the sense of the categories. And what I mean by categories is the different categories that these brands are in. So we mentioned Pepsi. Them and Dr. Pepper share our soft drink category. But AT&T, right? They own the naming rights to our stadium. They are our telecommunications and essentially almost everything technology related partner. So if we wanted to go after a company that sells, something that AT&T does as well, we would have to get AT&T's approval that either A, they don't want to, pay more and be able to provide those services, and B, that we can go after this other company within their category. So we're victims of our own success because our categories are so mature, because we have partners in all the big categories like trucks. We've got Ford, we have a luxury vehicle, we have our soft drinks, we have like all the basic categories. So it's tough now we're looking at, someday once it's legal at cryptocurrency and those types of sports betting, as that becomes legal in Texas in the future. Those are the areas that we're looking at.
So they could be like the official cryptocurrency of the Dallas Cowboys, because no one's claimed that yet. I've neglected to say, I want to ask a couple of follow-ups to our guests. As I do that, teachers and students, please put your own questions in the Q&A area of Zoom. So in the bottom row, it says Q&A. Put your questions there, put your name, put your school, and we'll pick some good ones out and ask them in just a few minutes. Okay, so please start putting your questions. I should have said it 5 minutes ago, but that's okay. Put your questions and we will start to go through them. I want to jump back to what we did before, going to the website, looking around, seeing what's going on. Let's start with Ms. Redmond. If you have a high school student, a college student who wants to intern for the Cowboys, and you have 10 applicants come in, 9 of them have only prepared to talk about their own resume, and the 10th had done some reading about the Cowboys. Maybe they watched Hard Knocks, they've done their homework, they're ready with questions. How do you look at that 10th person who did their homework as opposed to the ones who just came in ready to talk about themselves?
I definitely would have probably more to talk about with that person. And I'd be really impressed that they did their research, because yes, as much as an interview is, you're selling yourself and you're talking about yourself, I also want to know what you can give to me, right? I'm the one looking to hire you. So it is a little bit about me. So what maybe do you know about me? Have you looked at my LinkedIn? Do you know about my experience? I think the biggest thing in sports is so much about who you know rather than just experience. Experience is really important, but also who you know. I mean, right now we're in the process of hiring another intern, and we're not posting about it on Teamwork Online or front office jobs or anything. We're asking our department, who are some people that we know that we would recommend, because 1, we're trying to move quickly and hire this person, but 2, that kind of weeds out anybody who maybe isn't the right fit, or maybe is just applying because they're a fan of the team, which I don't want to hire someone who's just a fan of the team, because we need someone who's going to be really good at their job. It's not just about being a fan. And Brett can totally vouch for that. Like you almost don't want to be a fan of the team that you work for going into it. You want to become a fan because the team's success is your success and your success is the team's success. But if you came in and you were like, I'm just a diehard Cowboys fan, I would love to work for the team, might be a little bit of a red flag too.
Interesting. Mr. Raisman, how would you respond to what she said about, showing interest and just showing that you're thinking about more than just yourself when you're going after these kind of opportunities?
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of working in any job is about people. You want to work with people that you like, and you want to work with people who are diligent and hardworking. And knowing someone's background, 1, obviously proves that you're diligent and you took the extra, it takes 5 minutes to do research and figure out someone's past experience. And it also gives you ammo to ask questions. And a funny thing about people is that they love to talk about themselves. So take advantage of that. An example in my life is, like, I had a networking call last week with someone I don't know, never met, cold messaged them on LinkedIn. They were nice enough to offer the opportunity to talk to them. And I saw that they went to summer camp 10 miles away from my summer camp. So we had something very easy to talk about for the first 15 minutes of the call. Totally breaks the ice. And then you get into whatever you want to get into.
I love that. And Ms. Redmond said it. She said, I wouldn't even mind if people went and looked me up before the interview.
100%.
And she mentioned a website in particular. It starts with an L. What website did she say that you should go and look people up before you go to that interview? There we go. Right? You don't even have to have an account on LinkedIn. You can still look up someone's profile. And like Mr. Raisman said, you know, sometimes the best stuff in a profile is at the very bottom, like where they went to school or where they went to summer camp or where they play an instrument or they like this type of book, or that's the stuff where you might make that connection. And the fact that someone was able to, you know, that he saw that the same summer camp, that's the stuff that helps to break the ice, as he said. It's these little things, right? We sometimes overthink the interview, and it's really just about being a human being and being real with somebody.
Yeah.
All right, we have a lot of questions popping in, and there's one that's really bubbling up to the top that many people have asked. Sandy Draper asked it, and Kimberly Kirk asked it. And so they're asking, what did you major in college? What was your path from college to the job you have? I'll start with Ms. Redmond.
So I went to Arizona State University, and before going into college, I thought that I was going to major in sports broadcasting because, to be transparent, the only real visibility that I saw for females in sports was like the sideline reporters, right? The Erin Andrews of the world, the Pamela Olivers, like that's all I had seen. I didn't know that there was a whole business side that was something that I could do. So was going to study sports journalism, then decided that I was actually going to go the business route. So I majored in marketing, and then I added sports business as a double major when that program started at ASU, and was very involved with on-campus organizations like the Sports Business Organization or Sports Business Association, and then had some internships. And I don't know, Danny, if you want me to go into like my internship track necessarily.
Yeah, let's just get us into that. What really helps students understand, as they say, blocking and tackling, right? Like how it all really comes together.
Yeah. So freshman year, went to ASU, did not know anybody, and saw that there was going to be a sports business career fair and thought, what the heck, I'll go. I don't know. It's a great way to meet people. So I had put together my resume, and yes, I had experience from a job in high school, but it wasn't necessarily, you know, sports business experience. But put together my resume, went to this career fair, handed out my resume, and shook every person's hand at the career fair. And I ended up getting 3 interview opportunities, which was very surprised by. Went through that process and ended up interning for a company called Navigate Research. And they are based in Chicago, but had an office in Scottsdale near campus where I went to school. And from there, I was a market research intern. So I helped with evaluating the effectiveness of a sponsorship from this agency standpoint. From there, and that was an unpaid internship. So went in unpaid. Sophomore year, got an internship by a recommendation of a friend that I had made to an agency called AdSport based in Phoenix. And they handled primarily at the time all of Chevron and Texaco's sports partnerships from NBA to NHL, NFL, MLB, all across the board.
Cool.
From there, I got an introduction to the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals, and I interned for their business development team on the partner service and activation team. My junior year, got invited back my senior year. So I really, really stuck with sponsorships because it was something that I knew that I really liked and something that I felt that I was pretty good at and really was my niche. And what I had really focused on, because then the Cardinals offered me a job upon graduation, and I ended up spending 4 seasons with the Cardinals before coming here to the Cowboys. So,
wow, I love that. You know, internships are all about evaluating what we like, what we don't like, right? That's what it's really for. Like, let's test it out. And she saw what she liked, and then she decided to stay in that lane. Mr. Raisman, what was your path from school to the job?
Yeah, so I went to WashU in St. Louis. Loved it. When I went there, the sports business program was just starting. So that was a really good opportunity for me. So although it wasn't very robust, I was able to be very entrepreneurial and make it whatever I wanted. So a small example is that we hosted a business summit, very similar to this, where you invite guest speakers from various companies around the world that work in sports. And one of the people that came was this guy by the name of Todd Pollock. He's like the senior vice president of ticketing with the Vegas Golden Knights. And this was the year before they had their first season. So he comes in and talks about their season ticket drive where they sold like 10 to 11,000 season tickets in a day. And that's how they got their team.
Wow.
I go up to him after the presentation. We schmooze a little bit. I get his card. And then I ended up driving him to the airport in my stinky car with like my hockey equipment, which was just really funny. And then 3 months later, we stayed connected. And I had a independent study with myself and 4 other students to work for the Vegas Golden Knights and give business recommendations to their team on how to get over the honeymoon phase or keep their fans through the honeymoon phase of being this new sexy team. Obviously, we did not anticipate them being so good so quickly, so they didn't really need our help. But it was a really good experience, an easy way to get introduced just by talking to someone and having a conversation. The second thing I'll say is that, well, number one, there is no path. So like Maddie and I both had very specific paths where we did marketing and sports business. But like, to be frank, it doesn't really matter what your academic skills were in college, because what you do in the working world is usually very different than what you do in a sports business classroom or a marketing classroom. Not to say I don't use anything that I did, but it's really about the networking and getting good experience like Maddie and I did, and then translating that into networking and kind of selling yourself and meeting as many people as possible. So after that independent study, I was lucky enough to get connected to the NHL. I actually was a part of their last internship class in 2018. So that was the summer of my junior year. The summer before that, I just worked at summer camp like a kid and had fun. And then my senior year, I spent the entire year networking, and it's very, very difficult to get a job right after school in sports. Maddie must have been an all-star at her internships and was able to get one right out of college. Unfortunately, I was not. It's very, very difficult when you're 22 and you, frankly, an internship is not hard experience. It's obviously great. You make connections, but people in sports are generally looking for people who have 1 to 2 years of experience for an entry-level job, which doesn't sound right, but that's just the way the industry is. So when I graduated without a job, which was mentally very difficult because a lot of my friends are in iBanking making 6-figure salaries, and they had their job since October of our senior year. So I graduated. I still stayed on the network grind. It was a little tough, but eventually I got a really good opportunity to intern at the Players Tribune, which was a very fun experience and a really good first gig for me at a school. After that, my internship ended. They weren't able to, for budget reasons, give me a full-time offer. So I politely said I cannot afford to live in New York City on an hourly wage, which you'll find that's a challenge that you go through if you want to work in sports, is the financial side of it. And then I ended up going home to my family. I was unemployed for like 4 to 5 months, which was really tough. I would say a big piece of advice that I learned is the best time to find a job is while you have a job. So in hindsight, I probably should have stayed at the Players Tribune a little bit longer and made it work as best as possible. But I felt like without a full-time salary, I couldn't make it work, which is a small regret of mine. In hindsight, it all worked out anyways. Then I ended up working in insurance with my dad, which I'm very lucky that I had that opportunity, but insurance is not as sexy as sports, and it's not really my passion. It was a really good experience because my dad has 1,000 clients that I'm coordinating a million different things at once and organizing all of his appointments and whatever we're offering or whatever the insurance companies are offering. So it was a really good experience for someone who I would not call like organization and attention to detail my strengths. I'm more of like a creative type, but that really made it a strength of mine, and it was a really good experience for me. And then eventually I had been connected to the Islanders for a long, long time, but an opportunity never really arose. And I ended up reconnecting with ownership just by luck and happenstance in October of 2019. And then I stayed in touch with them for another 6 months. Finally, something opened up. They interviewed me like about 3 different times. I wasn't sure if I was going to get it. Eventually, I got the call that I got the job with the ownership group, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I got really lucky. So I think the lesson that you can learn from my experience is that When you graduate, if you're looking to go into sports, it's extremely difficult. So don't discount taking a more like conventional job. Like if I worked at Target in marketing for 2 years, it would not have hurt my career and I would have gotten great experience. And although things worked out really well for me, it was definitely a very difficult path. But it worked out and I'm very thankful.
Awesome. Thank you for both sharing your stories. I think it's important to see, and teachers and students, raise your hand. There's no straight path. There's no easy way to get there, right? You have to work at it. No one's going to just open that door first time and say, well, step right in, right? There's going to be challenges. You have to fight through it. And that's what we want our students to hear. I want to get to a few more questions from the group. We have Sarush Noktedan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I hope so, said, how do you apply for an internship at a sports team? Like, how would you even know where to look? I'll go to Ms. Redmond first. Like, I know you said you're not posting yours, but maybe there are others within the organization, or just generally you had a lot of internships coming up the way. How do you even figure this out? Where do you even start to look?
Yeah, so there is a website called Teamwork Online that is honestly like the Bible of sports jobs, I would say.
What is it called again? Let's put it in the chat.
I'll type it in there.
There we go. Real stuff. Here's just some real intel, everybody.
Okay. Teamworkonline.com. Sorry, left the .com part out there. Teamwork Online is where essentially every team is going to post jobs for internships, for full-time opportunities, everything from executive level jobs to entry-level jobs are on there. Even front office jobs. So Front Office Sports is a website where you can read different articles about what's happening in the industry. They have a job section as well. So 9 times out of 10, that's where all of our jobs are posted. And then we actually post them on LinkedIn. So I run the Cowboys LinkedIn platform. So we will post, I'll post jobs on there that link to Teamwork Online. So I would say Teamwork Online is probably the biggest. Even just LinkedIn for each team, they might post on their own LinkedIn profiles as well. That's kind of, Brett, you were shaking your head like, yeah.
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, so teamwork is definitely the number one. But it's important to know, like Maddie said, they're not posting their job. Sometimes we don't post our jobs, which is, in my opinion, not really right. Like everyone should have an opportunity to apply, but you got to work with what you got. And the sports industry is very, I'll say, old school and stuck in its ways. There's very successful business, so why would they change? So what you really need to do is you need to network, and then you need to network, and then you need to network some more. So if you see a job on Teamwork Online, great, apply for it. But guess what? 300 other people applied because they're all fans of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
So what you need to do is you need to go to LinkedIn, find someone in that department, find the hiring manager, cold LinkedIn message them. Even if they don't reply to you, it's still good. Like they still saw it. They still know that you're taking the extra step, and they're not always going to reply to you. They're going to reply to you like 20% of the time if you're lucky. The second thing I would do is, regardless of whether or not you see a job posting, network. Like cold linked. If you don't have connections, obviously that's a little bit of a disadvantage, but you can LinkedIn as much as possible. You make one connection, you ask that person to introduce you to someone else. Magically, you have 2, and it just goes on and on and on. If you're not someone who has a developed network in the sports world, I would make it a goal to talk on the phone with someone at least once a week. By the end of the year, you're going to have 50 really good contacts. And it's really hard. This is the hardest industry to work into. Traditionally, the jobs that are considered fun, whether it's like movies, music, sports, whatever it is, they're the hardest jobs to get into because everyone wants to do it. So it's really about you being as resourceful as possible and as much of a go-getter as possible and making things happen rather than waiting for things to happen to you.
I love it. And yeah, I want to go ahead, Ms.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Brett said too, something that this is like my secret sauce, so to speak. When you're networking with people, right? It's great to have those people in your court when you need something, but also you don't only want to be reaching out to people when you need a job, right? Because if you're like, if I know Brett's looking for a job and I get an email from him every 6 months saying, hey, Maddie, you guys hiring in the marketing department? I am probably not going to actually want to help him because he's not offering anything to me and he's just being a pest, right? So my point or my piece of advice is create an Excel spreadsheet, okay? Put the person's name in it, their job, and the link to their LinkedIn profile, and track your cadence. So how frequently you're reaching out to them, and make it a reminder, like put it on your calendar once a year for some, maybe every 6 months, just to send an email or a note, just to say hi, hope you're doing well. Biggest thing you can do is if they work for a team, email them. If someone were to email me like right now, right, our season kicks off in 2 days, and they just say, hey, Maddie, cheers to, hope that the season goes really well. Really excited to see what the Cowboys do this year. Talk soon. That means I don't even have to reply, but me just seeing that email makes me feel good and will keep them top of mind, so that then when I know that we have a job, I might be like, oh yeah, Brett just sent me this really nice note actually earlier at the beginning of the season. I think he'd be interested in this. We need to reach out to him and interview him. So reach out to people even when you don't need something, because everyone wants to feel loved and feel warm and fuzzy inside, right?
Yeah. One more thing I'll just add is when you're reaching out to someone, like, you have to keep in mind that they're doing you a favor. That person is really busy. And sometimes it's like annoying, to be totally frank.
Yeah.
So it's really important that when you message someone, you're very accommodating and extremely appreciative of what you're doing. Not to say you shouldn't reach out to people, you have to. But if someone doesn't reply to you, don't be mad at them. Just be like very like nonchalant. Like, I know you're super busy. 2 weeks later, you can even say, if it's important and time sensitive, you can say, hey, just checking in again. I know you're super busy. Can talk whenever you want. Like, I'll accommodate my schedule for you. Just like little things like that. There are some people who reach out and are almost not demanding, but they're like, they don't understand where they're coming from or like the vibe that they should be going for. Just make sure you're as nice and as appreciative as possible when someone is helping you or if you're looking for help. And like Maddie said, always reach out when you don't need something, even every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever it is.
Wow. Teachers, students, let's see some Zoom hands if this is pretty good advice, because I think they're giving you solid gold over here. They're telling you exactly how to go out there and politely make your presence known. You have to step forward and make people know you're there. But there's a way to do that, a politeness about it, so that they're going to like you for doing it and not want to shoo you away. So this is awesome stuff. I want to take one quick pause. We're going to do a quick writing exercise to exactly what they were saying, learning how to communicate professionally so people want to talk to you. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to do this together. We talk a lot in the Rubin Company and in our online resources about professional communication. Can everybody see this screen okay, this Word document? Okay, we talk a lot about texting in our program. Now, they're recommending you use LinkedIn and email, which I do too, but there are certain times you end up in a back and forth text exchange with somebody for whatever reason. And let's say that person's text is lowercase and sloppy, but we need to maintain a level of professionalism regardless of how the person's writing to us, right? Because we control ourselves. So I want you all, how would you respond to this text as a text, but with proper grammar? Can you show me in one sentence what your response would look like? Tell me in the chat. Are you still able to make the job interview on Tuesday at 11? How would you respond to that with proper grammar and professionalism?
And Danny, because, yes. I will say too, this is actually how a lot of executives will communicate. One, because I'll call it out, like the boomers, baby boomer generation, they love shorthanding text. So one of our senior VP of sales on our team, super successful guy, he will send emails that just say KTHX, and it's totally normal for him and no one takes it inappropriately, but it's not really, it was something that was a surprise to me when I first met him. I'm like, you're a 45-year-old, successful man and you're talking like this, but it totally happens.
Exactly right.
I'll add to that. Sometimes it's difficult because older executives are so busy and they have a lot more that they're preoccupied from like a big decision strategic standpoint than someone like me who's kind of at the bottom of the organization. So oftentimes I have to translate what they might mean or what they might not mean. And in the worst case, you have to ask them to clarify. So like, which kind of stinks because you don't want to ask them to clarify, do that. But you want to make sure that it's better to ask a question and then do something right than guess and do it wrong and misinterpret. But as best as you can, ask a friend for help before you ask your boss for help. So like ask someone who's also a coordinator or whatever it may be for help before you kind of re-ask the boss again.
Great advice. And thank you, Ms. Redmond, for your echoing that, because what we talk about in our material in our company, it's all the little stuff, the little ways you write people, the research you've done, knowing you went to the same summer camp or the one across the street, like that's the stuff that makes things happen. Those little moments, those little connections, the finer points, they're not harder to do. They just take a little more thinking. So as we wrap up in our final few minutes and some last thoughts from our guests who've been excellent today. Again, for those who missed it at the beginning, especially the educators here, we have a Google Drive folder of email etiquette lessons going down into these 20, 30-minute lessons on subject lines and email signatures and all these little things to help students look their best when they're corresponding. Also an online presentation checklist, a one sheet on how to look your best in an online presentation. And for those who missed it, if you'd like these resources for your classroom, please put the word interested and your email address in the chat. And if you're new to our community, we'll have a brief phone call later this week. We'll send you a Google invitation. You tell us if that time works or not. It's going to just hit your calendar and we'll chat for just a moment and pass along the resources. Again, if you are watching this on a recording, email us support@rubineducation.com with that subject line, and we'll pass it along that way. Our next virtual internship webinar is on the 22nd, the world of medical careers. Please join us at 1:30 Eastern. And finally, everyone is going to get a certificate for being here, students and teachers, that'll come to you on Wednesday morning. All right, so let me hop back. A couple more minutes to spare. I think we've had such a great conversation. I really love getting down in the nitty gritty, right? I mean, you can talk at top level about, the job, but it's really about the tactical, how you went about landing the job and doing your job well. That's what I hope students take away. I do have a question for Ms. Redmond because it's in the back of my mind. Does Jerry Jones know your name? Does he know who you are? And if so, what is he like to interact with? I have to ask about that.
He definitely does know my name because I had an event with him last Thursday. Okay. So we got
Jerry Jones is the owner of the Cowboys, the legendary owner of the Cowboys. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So we actually, it's fun to hear Brett talk about working with the ownership group too, because we work very closely with our ownership group. So the Jones family, Jerry Jones being the father, and then his three kids, Charlotte, who's our chief brand officer, Stephen, who's essentially our GM, and VP of player business development, all of that. And then Jerry Jr., his son, who's our COO. We work very close with them. And I had an event with Jerry last week, so he does know my name. I don't know if he'll remember me if he sees me again. Right. I've held the door for him another time. So we do see them around. And the family is so, so great to work with and so supportive of us. I will say through the pandemic. So I started similar timing to Brett. I actually started in March of 2020. Wow. So I decided, why not change everything in my life while a global pandemic's happening? I'm going to leave my comfortable job, leave the city that I love and move to Dallas and start a new job. And I'm really glad that I did it. Everything worked out really well, but the Jones family was so great. They didn't end up laying off any of our employees, which was really, really special and not something that all organizations could say, right? And they know how important our job is and how much they, care for our partners and our clients, and the attention to detail that they give to them is just incredible. So,
wow,
great to work with.
Great answer. Mr. Raisman, final question for you. What are you most excited about within the new, is it called UBS? What is the name of it?
UBS Arena.
What are you most excited about in your new digs?
It's a good question. I mean, I think Islanders fans have been waiting for a new home for 40 years. Nassau Coliseum is great, but it's not a proper arena for a professional team at this point. And the NHL has said that, and that's part of the reason why the Islanders needed to get a new arena. I think the most special part about it is that our ownership group, who is probably just like, I would say the Cowboys and the Islanders ownership groups are probably the two most involved ownership groups on the planet. So like Maddie and I have very unique perspectives. Most of the other times it's not really like that. But our ownership group was very careful to keep as much of the soul of Nassau Coliseum as possible in the new arena. So obviously the new arena has all the bells and whistles that you want, but you have a lot of these new stadiums that look like spaceships from Mars. Yeah. Ours is to fit seamlessly in Belmont Park, which is where the horse track is. And it's supposed to look like it's been there for 100 years. And it's another very unique part is that the actual like bowl and ceiling size is very comparable to Nassau Coliseum. So it's still going to be a very intimate, close experience, but instead of 12,000 people, it's going to be 17,000 people, and it's going to be so loud it rips your face off. So it's going to be really exciting. So much has gone into it. And then another thing that's really special is that it's totally privately funded. I think it's really tough when you see other organizations kind of holding cities a little accountable or hostage, whatever the word you want to use. But it's very unique that this is fully privately funded, and our organization during the midst of a global pandemic, during a multi-billion-dollar project, also did not lay anyone off. So very, very thankful. And like I said, our ownership's involvement and not laying anyone off, very rare between the Cowboys and Islanders. That does not happen across the board. So we're very lucky.
Wow. Well, I want to, we'll wrap up here. Can we have a show of hands, which will be our virtual applause for our guest today? A show of Zoom hands, please, as we wrap up. Weren't they great? Such great advice. I love that you're early in your careers. You can connect with students, not too far removed from the classroom. And these students are trying to see themselves, in your shoes and the work that you're doing. And you gave great guidance for how to pursue this very challenging, very competitive field. So I want to thank you both for your time. I want to thank our sign language interpreter for keeping up with us in this conversation. I hope you'll all join us in 2 weeks for the world of medical careers. And again, and those of you who requested the resources, will be reaching out to you in the next few days. So just check your email from us and then let us know if the time will work. Again, thank you, everybody. And I'll let you get back to your school day, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks again.